Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Well, it's all about love, and that's why I named this show Just Relationships. Relationships are everything in life. And even though women, girls and women, are more relational in general, that does not mean that males are also not relational, or shall I put it this way, they need relationship just as much as females. But it's kind of obscured by culture, by patriarchal culture, for one thing. So I'm going to stop talking because I want to introduce to you my wonderful guest, Dr. Brenda Shoshanna, who is a prolific author and speaker and seminar leader and retreat giver and Zen Buddhist. Is that correct, Brenda? Zen?
I've been a Zen practitioner for 50 years, but I'm Jewish.
Okay.
So I combine the two.
Zen.
That's
Zen
my big work.
Practitioner. Yes.
I combine it with and not just with Judaism, with Christianity.
Yes,
too.
with all religions. Yes.
Yeah, I'm more of an interfaith person in that respect.
Okay.
One spirit.
So we are looking at the Unshakable Road to Love, value-centered relationships. I will say that again, the Unshakable Road to Love, value-centered relationships. So, Dr. Brenda Shoshanna, please tell us, how come you wrote this book?
Great question. I was working on something else, which I've actually just finished, and I had to put it to the side because I felt there was such a huge need to get this material out there to the world, given what's going on right now, these past few years, which is unbelievable. And I thought the loneliness, the fear, the enforced separations that are going on all over, it was so, and including in my life, it was so shocking and heartbreaking that I was called to, because I feel I know I know a path toward healing that. Very simple, very easy, very natural. And I really felt I had to share it with everyone, that this came before anything else.
So simple, easy, natural to find love, to have love in our lives, Dr.
Yes,
Brenda?
To overcome loss, to overcome this, to overcome the feeling of separation. Yes. And actually, if we take this path, it's inevitable.
Okay, it's inevitable that love will blossom in our lives if we take this path.
Yes.
So do tell Dr. Brenda Shoshanna, what is this path?
Well, this path is who we are. It's based upon what I call, the pillars of love. This book is based upon the eternal truths from all the world scriptures. So it's not my path. What I love to study, all the world scriptures, including Zen, of course. And I found a heartbeat in every one of them and specific eternal truths about relationships, as you so beautifully said before, and about love and about healing all this pain that we're in. And we may have read these truths, we may know them, but do we practice them? We need to make them our flesh and bones. That's where Zen comes in. Zen is practice. And my work here is to take these incredibly eternal truths and make them your flesh and blood, give you exercises, directives, show you how to practice them and where they come from and talk about them. So once we do start to practice them, upset, conflict, loneliness, can disappear so quickly. And I've seen it happen now over and over again. That's why I'm so inspired to get up early and talk about this and to share it with whomever, because this isn't my material and it's needed. It belongs to everybody.
So tell us what we know and what we don't practice yet, or we haven't practiced sufficiently yet.
I love the way you said that. Yet, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that because because what Duffy's pointing to, and it's true. No guilt here, no blame. It's not about, oh my goodness, the way we beat ourselves up all the time. No, please, no. What I've done in the book, I've taken what I call the pillars of love, basic truths of love. And I'll tell you some of them and show you how you can turn this around. And just to begin with, the most basic one, the most fundamental one, I'd like to start with this first. This comes actually from the Torah, and I have the different ones come from all the different scriptures. This one is, people say, well, when you're married at your wedding, this is really the peak of love, isn't it? You're so high, you're so happy, everybody's celebrating. And the Torah comes to say, no. It's not the peak of your love at all. In fact, it's just the beginning, because now this is so important for everybody. Your partner, the one who you've been given, is your teacher in what it means to love. I love that so much. And it's not only your partner, your marriage partner, everybody you meet. I took it a step further, and I say everybody you meet is your teacher in what it means to love. Not necessarily to be loved, but because the more you become loving, you'll be filled with love. You can't be unhappy and loving at the same time. Impossible. So we have to learn what it means to be loving and how. And that's what this book is dedicated to.
Okay, so when you say karma, Karma, is the teacher of what love means. And we can practice this. Did I get you?
Yeah. I don't remember that sentence, but it's interesting, right?
Yes. Yeah. And we can find these loving relationships everywhere, not just with our love partner or romantic partner, but we can have loving relationships in general. You're saying, Dr. Brenda.
And we must. And we must, because and one of the big important points in the book is to differentiate between counterfeit love and real love. And I'm saying, if you're in a relationship and it hurts and you're suffering and you're upset, that's not love. That's counterfeit love. And if we have time, I'll explain the difference. And if you're in counterfeit love, you're going to hurt. It hurts. And many times with our partners, even our love partners, we're in pain, we're disappointed, we're trying to fix things. That's because we're trapped in counterfeit love.
Well, isn't it possible, though? I want to give you a little pushback here.
Please.
Isn't it possible to have real love and still have conflict and hurt?
No. That's so exciting. Perfect question. I love the question.
Okay.
I love that question because no, you know why? Because when we are really standing and living in the feeling of real love, we are ourselves so happy, so filled with love as we're sharing it. You can't be hurt. You cannot feel that feeling of love and hurt at the same time, just the way you cannot feel depressed and grateful at the same time. You cannot. No, it really isn't, because when you're in a place of real love, it's not about you. It's not about what I call the ego you, the small you.
Right.
It's not about that at all.
Ego or small you. Yes, absolutely.
It's not about gimme, or am I happy, or what am I getting out of this? That's all counterfeit love. And we've all been trained. That's why this work is, Duffy, I feel it's so, Dr. Duffy, I'm sorry. This book, that's why I feel this is so important, because we have been trained the opposite way from birth. And so in a way, this is very radical because it goes against the tide, but it's not radical either. The New Testament is filled with it. Zen is filled with it. The Quran is filled with it. The Bhagavad Gita is filled with it. Whatever your practice is, it's filled with these teachings. And we read it and we smile and say, that's so nice. But do we actually absorb it and live it?
So Dr. Brenda Shoshanna, I want to give you again some pushback. I'm sure you know the term, the sentence, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
So, okay, let's get down to brass tacks. The average parents, especially in our culture, are living in states of distress, stress, even despair, a lot of unhealed wounds, and being taught that you're not allowed to feel certain feelings. Feelings are the enemy. And shut down if you have feelings, especially for boys, and girls aren't allowed to feel angry, and boys aren't allowed to feel tenderness, and all of this, and so then they grow up, and it's intergenerational, and they're unresolved in their feelings, and they're out of touch with themselves.
Right.
It's a detachment. It's not a detachment in a good way. It's as you say, separation within yourself, the disowned self.
Mm-hmm.
And they have children, and then they have children.
That's right.
So it's interesting you say this is natural. I'm wondering if what we want to teach now, to be loving instead of just look for love, is counterintuitive in a way.
Well, it is counterintuitive, yes. Absolutely. And yes, we get hurt a lot, and hurt people. And that's very true. And we're talking about our conditioning now.
Right.
We're conditioning our reactions as opposed to our responses. And a very important point in this, I'm so glad you're making these points because it's very relevant. A very important point in the book is that whatever happens to you, it does not determine necessarily your happiness or unhappiness or how you feel. It's your response to it that determines how you feel. Somebody can be very nasty to you. It's how you perceive it and how you react that's going to determine how you're going to feel. So you don't have to keep that chain of knee-jerk reactions going. That's the conditioned knee-jerk response. Of course, we're all in it. We all have gone through it. And yes, we have to step out of it. That's why this is a practice. Like you go to the gym and you practice getting your muscles strong.
Good point.
This is a practice. And it's taking, you know what I did? It's taking relationships and taking your everyday life and making it into a spiritual practice.
Okay, so again, going back to our younger days, our formative years, a child is distressed, a child is put down for being distressed.
Of course.
Not supported, not emotionally supported, doesn't feel understood, seen, heard. And they develop, in my language, it's one term. This is through the internal family systems.
I love that.
Which I practice.
Oh, great.
We have wounded parts. We have protected parts. So the reaction, as you say, to the hurt are the development of these protector patterns.
Yes, but and you know what? But if we
acts out of fear,
yes,
and then the child is labeled and judged and defined by their acting out behavior, which in Zen Buddhism, I guess, would be called the second arrow. And then how does one learn, to grow out of that?
Well, first of all, just the fact that you're doing the internal family systems, and many people taking different pathways of practice. So we all want to grow out of that. That's why I said it was natural, because love resides in all of us, our spirit. And I believe in internal family systems is called the self.
Yes.
There's a part of us a part of each one of us that knows the truth and that is the truth and that is beyond. I'm not putting down all of these parts because, I'm a playwright too. I've lived with these parts and they're
Wow.
important and they're beautiful. And nobody's saying ever to repress them or to pretend they're not there. And that's not what this is about.
That's
It's
right.
not,
Yes, the
it's
self with a capital
right.
S.
This because
Exactly.
fundamentally we all have so much love within us
Mm-hmm.
and we just don't know how to access it. We
Right.
just don't know how to access that which is going to give us real security and happiness and beautiful relationships. So this is really taking the truths, as I said, from all the practices, which we're
Mm.
doing anyway. People are practicing many things. And I mean, even look, I've been in the Zendo, you know how many years and years, and even our own little Zen hut here. We practice it. I mean, I've always found it fascinating, Duffy. We'll hear things said, like we recite things from morning service in the Zendo or in the synagogue or in the church. People recite things and say things, but they don't know how to actualize them. I don't see them often living them.
Right.
That's what struck me, and that's always struck me. Because so part of us knows it. Since we're going into the parts, there's a part of us that loves it when we read it and we know it. But then, how do we integrate all these parts, and how do we actually live these very simple truths, simple laws of love? They're there, like gravity. If you jump off a building, you'll fall, you'll get hurt. There are these simple laws of love are like gravity. And they're simple. That's why I said it's natural and simple. It's easy. They're not complicated to learn. Other systems of practice are much more complicated.
So Dr. Brenda, we need love like we need air, like we need oxygen. I completely agree that we are basically loving. Yes. I think when people argue about is human nature basically good or evil, I think that it's both. I think we have the capacity for both. In other words, we have deep within us the ability to be cooperative. And that's why we survived as a species. At the same time, if there's not enough water, we become competitive. So I think we can go either way, depending upon the circumstances, but also, as you say, depending upon one's mindset, one's willingness, one's awareness that there is so much more than they may realize, that people are so much more basically loving.
And when you're in a very loving position, you won't have to compete for anything because you feel so filled up. You perceive people differently. The more deeply you go into your essentially loving nature. I think that a lot of what we experience is illusion.
Yes, okay.
And we are responding to our perceptions and our illusions. There's not enough for me. Oh, he's going to like her more than me. I have to compete for this. This is my source of love. And of course, no person is ever your source of love. You are your source of love, and it will flow through you phenomenally. And the more you practice this, the more your perceptions of others change, because we don't really respond to the real person there. We respond to our perception of them, how we view them. Do we view them as a homeless person? It's too long a story, but I had an incredible interaction with this homeless man. Absolutely incredible. When suddenly something switched in me and I just saw the beauty in him and I saw the love in him. I didn't see him anymore that way. So as your perceptions change, not only will it affect you, but it'll affect them, because people really feel the way you perceive them. And you bring that out in them. The way you perceive another person, you bring it out in them. If you perceive your child as a failure, disappointing, that's what they'll become. They'll start acting that out.
It becomes induced.
Yes, exactly.
Our projections become induced.
Absolutely true.
And we're constantly projecting onto other people what's in our head and not even realizing we're doing it, that it's our fantasy, it's our, as you say, illusion, the precepts, the stereotypes, and then it will become that way. And I think, by the way, Mary Shelley, when she wrote Frankenstein at the age of 18, which was remarkable, the theme of her book was really that here was Frankenstein who became alive and was so thrilled to become alive and was so loving and reaching out, but the world saw him as a monster, so he became a monster.
Absolutely. That's that's so true. So can you imagine if we're looking through the eyes of love at everyone? In this practice, we don't change the other person at all. We take charge of our own perceptions and our own responses. And it's almost miraculous the way it affects them, because people feel that right away. I think I began to tell you I had a potentially dangerous encounter with someone in my house.
Wow.
And he came in to do some work in my house. We were alone, and he came in one way, and I began immediately to do this practice. I mean, just immediately. And it was almost miraculous. He suddenly stopped and he started saying, "God bless you, God." This is a truth. This is a truth. I was
How did you treat him, Dr. Brenda?
Well, I've been studying, and the truth is I wrote this book because I need it too. And I began practicing. What I did was I bowed to him in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I said, in my mind, not in front of him, and I said, "Thank you for being my teacher in what it means to love." Mm-hmm. I immediately changed my perception. Rather than, "Oh my God, he's come to hurt me. This is dangerous. He's crazy." Instead of thinking all those, that was my initial reaction. But I changed it immediately. I took charge of my reaction. I bowed to him and in my mind, and I said, "Thank you for being my teacher in what it means to love." And then I said, "I grant you the right to be who you are." And I began looking at him through the eyes of love, seeing the beauty in him. And let me tell you, he was shocked. He began to go he was confused because as you said, that it is counterintuitive. Mm-hmm. It's not what we normally do. Mm-hmm. And I really kept doing it with a lot of intensity. And I send you love and light. That's from the Tibetan Buddhist. All the many of the practices in the book. How may I serve you? And I was really 100% doing it. And he just stopped. And he started blessing me. This is a true story, Duffy. I promise you, Dr. Duffy, I promise you. And he looked at me and he said, "You know what?" I said, "What?" He said, "Something very good's coming for you soon." I said, "Oh, thank you." He wanted to give me a gift back. And I just felt so much love for him and he for me. He said, "How can I help you out, sweetheart?" And he called me after he left. He called me for a few days after that. "How you doing? How you feeling? How's life going?" Really, this is a true story. So
you felt you were in danger?
I was. He was threatening me when he came into the apartment. It was potentially it was true. And, well, it wasn't true. It looked like that, as I said. It looked like that. But it could be changed. That was what, and I really leaned deeply on these principles and on these exercises.
How many pillars of love are there?
They're all through the book. There are many. There are also turning points, different way, and their practices. And there's also discussion about, for instance, there's discussion about where these points come from. And there's also discussion, there's a whole chapter on anger. I like what you said very much in the beginning of our show here, your show. It's true. The anger, I'm not bypassing any of it, really. There's a chapter on loss and grief, and all of that can be handled through using these principles. And these, Now these are not even my principles. I'll read you some of them. They're from if they're from the New Testament, people will recognize a lot of it. The Old Testament, And I said all the different scriptures and from Zen practice and from the Advaita, whatever you're practicing.
So, Dr. Brenda, the good news for everyone is that you are coming back next week.
I am.
And we are having a part 2 of our show, our series on Dr. Brenda Shoshanna, The Unshakable Road to Love.
Okay.
So, one pillar of love, each person is the perfect person for you to love.
Yes.
Say that again. Each person is the perfect person for you to love. The perfect person for you to love is the one who is standing in front of you right now, here,
Yes.
right where you are. So what I want to ask you, that luckily we have part 2 to talk about. If a person, and I'm talking for myself, I came from an alcoholic, violent family, and I had low self-esteem, and I acted out as a result. And it's no accident that in my early adulthood, in my professional life, I started teaching self-esteem building. And if I was drowned in self-hatred, I was drowning in my own self-hatred. And how does one move? And the reason I is that second arrow. The way I reacted as a child when I felt unloved, I became the black sheep, the angry one, the rebel. I was not the people pleaser because I had given up the idea of pleasing my parents. So I went the other route. If we believe we can't get a need met, we declare we don't have that need. Mm. And then I hated myself as a result of my reactive behavior. So how do we begin to tap into that self-love that brings us to loving others? And I do think, and I'm going to answer it right now because we have to close part 1, but the idea of forgiveness. I have to forgive myself for all of my acting out behavior, unkind, thoughtful, thoughtless, just, inconsiderate of others, self-serving. I had to do that. And also for me, I will say, besides my years and lifetimes of therapy, I'm also in recovery. I'm also a 12-stepper. So I follow the 12 steps of AA in any form, whatever the addiction is, because I knew I was addiction prone. I had the pain and I didn't have a sense of self-love. And with that, I will stop for now. I am interviewing Dr. Brenda Shoshanna, the author of The Unshakable Road to Love, Value-Centered Relationships. So tune in next week for part 2 of The Road to Love. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.